They don't just break your heart, they dismantle your reality. Narcissists don't love you. They study you, mirror your soul, and then weaponize it against you. What if the person you trusted most was never real at all, just a mask hiding something cold, calculating, and monstrous underneath? This isn't about heartbreak, it's about survival. Narcissists don't seek connection the way normal people do. For most of us, relationships are built on mutual trust, understanding, and shared vulnerability. But for a narcissist, those things aren't the goal, they're tools. Every gesture, every word, every moment of intimacy is calculated to strengthen their control over you. What feels like affection is actually strategy. They give you glimpses of love, enough to make you crave more, but never enough to feel secure. That's how they keep you hooked, always chasing, always trying to prove yourself worthy of something they never intended to give in the first place. When you first meet a narcissist, they appear magnetic. They're charming, confident, articulate, the kind of person who makes you feel seen in a way few people ever have. They mirror your thoughts, your values, your dreams. It feels like you finally met someone who truly understands you. But what's actually happening is far more sinister. They're observing you, cataloging your behaviors, noting what makes you light up, what makes you insecure, what kind of approval you seek. They're constructing a version of themselves designed to be irresistible to you. And the moment you fall for that illusion, they have you exactly where they want you. Control, for them, isn't about power in the traditional sense. It's about validation. They need to feel superior, adored, irreplaceable. The idea that someone could see their flaws or reject them threatens the fragile illusion they've built around themselves. So they manipulate your emotions to make sure that doesn't happen. They'll alternate between affection and withdrawal, praise and criticism, attention and silence. It's a psychological push and pull that leaves you desperate to win back the version of them who once made you feel so special. What you don't realize is that this dynamic is entirely by design. They create the problem, then position themselves as the only solution. Over time, you start to lose your balance. You find yourself walking on eggshells, constantly analyzing their tone, their mood, their silence. You begin to think that maybe you're the problem, that if you could just do something differently, they'd love you the way they used to. But the truth is, there was never any used to. The person who adored you in the beginning wasn't real, it was a mask. Once they feel secure that you're emotionally invested, they no longer need the disguise. That's when the control becomes overt. You'll notice how they interrupt you, how they dismiss your feelings, how your opinions no longer matter. They'll subtly, then openly, make you question your worth. The narcissist's world revolves around their ego. Every interaction must reinforce their dominance. They don't want equality, they want submission. They can't handle genuine closeness because that requires vulnerability, and vulnerability is something they equate with weakness. So they keep a distance, emotionally detached, but always present enough to maintain control. They thrive when you're uncertain because uncertainty breeds dependence. If you're confused, you're easier to manipulate. And if you start to gain clarity, they'll sense it immediately and shift tactics, suddenly becoming kind again, apologetic, reflective, just long enough to pull you back in. It's a cycle that repeats endlessly. Idealize, devalue, discard, then hoover you back in. Each stage serves the same purpose: to maintain their power. They don't love you because they can't. Love requires empathy, accountability, and compromise. What they offer instead is conditional affection tied to obedience. The moment you assert yourself, you'll feel their affection turn cold, their tone sharpen, their eyes lose warmth. You'll feel the punishment in their silence, in their indifference, in their calculated withdrawal of validation. That's how they reestablish control, by making you fear emotional abandonment. And here's what makes it so dangerous. On the surface, it doesn't look like abuse. It looks like misunderstanding, like tension, like relationship problems. You justify their behavior because they've trained you to doubt your perception. They blur the line between love and control so skillfully that you can't tell where one ends and the other begins. By the time you realize what's happening, your sense of self has already begun to erode, and you're no longer sure who you are without their approval. A narcissist's manipulation begins long before you realize it. They don't attack you outright. They infiltrate you slowly, subtly, through understanding. They study your behavior the way a predator studies prey. Patient, calculating, and precise. They learn what you fear, what you crave, what memories still haunt you, and what compliments make you light up. Every emotional reaction you show becomes part of their arsenal. They don't just want to know you, they want to own the way you feel. And once they understand your emotional blueprint, they can make you dance to it at will. You might think their interest in your vulnerabilities is compassion, that their attention is proof of love or connection. But for a narcissist, empathy is imitation. They mirror your emotions to gain your trust, to make you believe they get you in a way no one else ever has. You'll share something personal, a trauma, a fear, a dream, and they'll react perfectly, like someone who's been waiting their whole life to meet you. But that moment of intimacy isn't genuine. It's an opening. They file away your pain, your soft spots, your secrets. Because later, when control begins to slip, those are the exact things they'll use to break you. They weaponize your emotions with terrifying precision. If you're sensitive, they'll push your boundaries and then tell you you're too emotional. If you're strong and assertive, they'll twist your confidence into arrogance. They'll take your loyalty and turn it against you, making you stay in situations where you're being devalued. They'll provoke jealousy and then call you insecure. It's a game of inversion, turning your virtues into flaws until you begin to mistrust your own heart. They don't just manipulate what you do, they manipulate who you think you are. The narcissist thrives on reaction. Every tear, every apology, every argument fuels them. It's not about the content of the conflict, it's about the control it gives them over your emotional state. When you're happy, they'll find a way to pull you down. When you're calm, they'll ignite chaos. They want to be the center of your emotional universe, whether it's through love or pain, doesn't matter. What matters is that your world revolves around them. They condition you to seek their approval and fear their disapproval until your mood, your confidence, and even your peace of mind depend entirely on how they treat you. Eventually, you start to change without even noticing. You speak more carefully. You shrink your opinions. You second-guess your instincts. You tell yourself you're just trying to keep the peace. But the peace never lasts because they don't want peace, they want control. They'll switch between kindness and cruelty, praise and punishment, until your nervous system becomes addicted to the highs and lows of their behavior. You'll confuse their moments of softness for love and their cruelty for your fault, because that's exactly how they've trained you to think. Gaslighting is the narcissist's most insidious weapon because it doesn't just distort your perception of them, it erodes your perception of yourself. It starts small, almost invisible. You might notice inconsistencies in their words or behavior, moments that don't quite add up. But when you question them, they act offended or confused. They'll say, "I never said that," or "You're overreacting," or "You're remembering it wrong." And because they deliver these lines with such conviction, you begin to doubt your own memory. That's the first fracture in your sense of reality, and once it appears, they'll widen it until you no longer trust what you see or feel. Their goal is to make you dependent on their version of truth. When you can't trust your own mind, you have to rely on theirs. Every denial, every deflection, every twist of logic is designed to make you question yourself just a little more. Over time, those little moments accumulate. You stop confronting them because you've learned that doing so only leads to confusion, tension, or guilt. You start thinking, maybe I really am too sensitive. Maybe I am misremembering. They condition you to internalize blame for their behavior, which is precisely how they maintain control without ever appearing controlling. What makes gaslighting so powerful is that it targets your most fundamental sense of self, your ability to distinguish what's real. You'll begin to feel constantly uncertain, as though you're walking through fog. Conversations you remember clearly will be rewritten in front of your eyes. Events that hurt you will be dismissed as exaggerations. They'll even claim that things you never said or did actually happened. And when you try to defend yourself, they'll accuse you of being defensive, irrational, or unstable. The irony is that their accusations slowly become your new self-perception. You begin to see yourself through the lens they've created, flawed, emotional, and unreliable. To outsiders, the narcissist seems calm and rational while you appear anxious and reactive. That's part of the manipulation. They engineer the narrative so that your reactions look like the problem rather than their provocation. This duality isolates you further. You stop confiding in others because you're afraid they won't believe you, or worse, that they'll agree with the narcissist. The isolation deepens your dependence on them, giving them even greater control over your mind. The scariest part is how subtle it all becomes. You might think gaslighting is about dramatic lies, but more often it's death by 1,000 small contradictions. A tone that makes you question your intention, a look that makes you feel guilty, a sentence that makes you rewrite your own memories. Bit by bit, your confidence dissolves until you can no longer tell whether your pain is justified. You start apologizing for things that never happened. You start censoring yourself before you even speak. And eventually, the silence inside you becomes louder than their words, because you've learned to question every truth that once made you feel safe. When a narcissist feels exposed, when their carefully crafted image begins to crack, they don't take responsibility, they retaliate. They can't tolerate the idea of being seen as flawed or wrong, so instead, they twist the truth until they become the victim and you become the villain. The moment you confront them, even gently, they'll act as though you've wounded them deeply. They'll turn the focus away from their behavior and onto your reaction, making it seem as if your pain is cruelty, your boundaries are selfishness, your honesty is betrayal. This inversion of reality allows them to preserve their false self, to maintain the illusion of superiority and innocence that their fragile ego depends on. Their victimhood isn't real, it's performance. They can cry on cue, feign shock, and speak with such conviction that you begin to question your own motives. You might even start feeling guilty for bringing up what hurts you. That's exactly the point. The narcissist's goal is not to understand or resolve anything, it's to escape accountability. And if they can make you doubt yourself in the process, even better. They'll say things like, "I can't believe you'd think that of me," or "after everything I've done for you," flipping the script until you find yourself defending them instead of defending yourself. But it doesn't stop there. When their private manipulation no longer works, they take it public. They begin a campaign of reputation destruction, painting you as unstable, ungrateful, or toxic to anyone who will listen. They'll tell half-truths laced with carefully chosen lies, strategically designed to make you look like the problem while they appear noble and misunderstood. To the outside world, they seem calm, reasonable, and even compassionate, the perfect victim of your supposed cruelty. You'll watch in disbelief as people who once trusted you start to pull away, unsure of what to believe. That isolation is part of their plan. A narcissist knows that if they can control the narrative, they can control the damage. The smear campaign serves two purposes: protection and punishment. It protects their ego by ensuring that no one sees them as the perpetrator, and it punishes you for daring to expose them. In their mind, your act of truth-telling is betrayal. They see honesty as an attack, because their entire identity is built on lies. So they retaliate by trying to destroy the version of you that could hold them accountable. They'll rewrite the past, twist your words, and recount events in a way that makes you question whether anyone will ever see the truth. And while all this happens, they play both roles seamlessly, the victim and the savior. To one person, they'll cry about your cruelty. To another, they'll claim they're trying to help you heal. It's psychological theater at its finest, and they're the star. They need an audience because without one, their illusion collapses. They can't exist without external validation, without people believing their story. That's why exposure terrifies them. It's not the loss of love that scares them, it's the loss of control over how they're perceived. Because for a narcissist, image is everything, and truth is the one thing they'll destroy anyone. To avoid behind the narcissist's charm lies something deeply unsettling, an emotional void so profound that it feels almost inhuman. They can mimic empathy, they can say the right words, even cry at the right moments, but there's no genuine emotional depth behind it. Their emotions are performative, used strategically to manipulate, not to connect. When you look closely, you'll see that their warmth switches on and off like a light. One moment, they're affectionate and understanding, and the next, they're cold and indifferent, as if you never mattered at all. That shift isn't random, it's a reflection of the emptiness inside them. They don't love people, they use them as mirrors to see a reflection of their own importance. What makes this so chilling is how convincing they can be. They study emotional cues and learn to imitate them flawlessly. They know when to look concerned, when to touch your hand, when to say they're sorry. But those gestures aren't born from compassion, they're rehearsed responses meant to maintain control. When you're in pain, they don't feel remorse, they feel inconvenience. Your suffering is either a threat to their image or an opportunity to gain sympathy. To them, emotions are tools of manipulation, not signs of humanity. That's why their apologies always feel hollow. their affection inconsistent, and their care conditional. You can often sense this emptiness during moments that should be intimate or meaningful. When you share something vulnerable, they might respond correctly on the surface, but something in their eyes feels distant, disconnected. There's no resonance, no emotional exchange. It's like talking to someone who knows the language of feeling but has never actually experienced it. This lack of empathy is what allows them to inflict harm so effortlessly. They can betray, humiliate, or discard you without hesitation because your emotions hold no real value to them, only your reaction does. The reaction gives them power, reminds them that they still matter. When you confront them about their behavior, their response isn't guilt or understanding, it's irritation. They'll dismiss your pain or accuse you of exaggerating. If they do show remorse, it's often short-lived, disappearing as soon as they regain control of the situation. That's because remorse requires conscience, and conscience requires the capacity to feel the pain of another person. A narcissist doesn't have that. They operate from self-preservation, not self-awareness. Their actions are always driven by one question: how does this affect me? Anything outside that question is irrelevant. And when you finally see the truth, when you stop playing the role they've written for you, you'll witness that void in its rawest form. The mask slips, and you see the coldness behind their charm, the detachment in their eyes. It's a kind of emptiness that feels unnatural, almost predatory. You realize that all the love you thought you shared was never real, it was imitation. They don't grieve the loss of you, they grieve the loss of control. That's what makes them truly terrifying, not their cruelty, but their inability to feel anything real at all.